Hello and welcome to IDL, the business trailblazer podcast for seasoned innovators, rising disruptors, and inspiring leaders. I'm your host, Chris Britton, and today's bright business mind is Joseph Lampety of PayAngel. Joseph is the driving force behind PayAngel's growth strategies, with a focus on expanding their reach across the UK, EU, and Australia. Joseph's work at PayAngel has centered on leveraging data-driven insights to optimize growth and enhance transaction processes, ensuring secure and seamless experiences for African communities globally. So let's kick things off. Welcome to the podcast, Joseph.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris, for having me.
Very, very great to have you here. We've just been having a quick chat before we started recording, and I found out an awful lot about PayAngel. But I think why don't you share with our audience a bit about PayAngel and how it's all come about?
Great. So, the Pay Angel story is a very, very interesting one, and Mike, CEO, who doubles as the founder of Pay Angel, who was ex Barclays, used to work in the busy area of Canary Wharf, and for lots of people that do remittances to Africa or even to Asia and South America, we know that usually remittances come across mostly because of a need or an emergency at home. So there were these emergencies that the founder had to really sort out back home, but he had to leave his busy desk, go and queue with agents, and actually send money back home, which could take about 2 to 3 days before recipients do get their money. The
Wow.
alternative was to actually give money to people who were traveling back to Africa to actually send to these recipients. And usually these funds get diverted. So then, that quick thinking came about, okay, what can I do to ensure that I can, take out these bottlenecks, like having to leave my desk and go to an agent, having to use a third party to divert the funds, and also the high cost of remittances or transacting to Africa or Asia or wherever you are transacting to. So that's as where the Eureka idea came of, okay, now we can do convenience where you can sit in your office, in the comfort of your office. Within 2, 3 minutes, you should be able to send money to the recipient on his or her mobile device, or into the person's bank account, or a cash pickup, so the person actually receives the money instantly. Secondly,
Wow.
we decided he wanted to eliminate third party involvement because funds are usually diverted when you send them through third parties. And
Mhm.
thirdly, he thought about the fact that how can I reduce the cost of transactions so that people can actually send money home for an intended purpose without having to pay an arm and a leg. And so that is how the idea of Pay Angel was birthed. And now you can see that PayAngel is growing, and we're giving people convenience and faster, instant cross-border remittances and payments. We are doing zero fees like we've promised, and then we've eliminated the third-party involvement where we've given, senders the option to either send to their recipients on their mobile devices in their bank accounts, or to have them pick up cash from their recipient locations. So that's how PayAngel came about.
So why is it such a challenge then to send money overseas, specifically to Africa or to some of the Asian countries that you've mentioned? What makes it so challenging from that point of view?
Okay, so the challenges basically have been the very high fees, and
Hmm.
also it's also been a bit of compliance because we do not have maybe a common currency. We do have regulations from different countries, which makes it quite difficult for you to penetrate those markets. So usually, when people need funds, fintechs have come to disrupt the banks, because with banks, it used to take 2, 3, 4 days, even sometimes a week, to get money from one point to the other. But with fintechs like PayAngel, we've been able to disrupt the market to ensure that people get instant or near instant payments, or receive remittances in Africa and in Asia. We all know that there are a lot of migrants who have moved from Africa, who have moved from Asia in search of greener pastures, in search of a better education. And families back home do rely on them. So to give them that easy access of receiving monies back home, that is why fintechs like PayAngel come in and ensure that seamless, free transactions so that it would encourage families here in the diaspora to do more transactions.
Fantastic. That's really great. So, in terms of then, you've been looking at all sorts of different ways of growing the business. You're the key driver of the growth here, and this is your key responsibility. So, one of the things that I just briefly mentioned in the introduction, and I've been reading about online and talking about with you, is like the data behind the growth strategy and how that's helping you to scale and collating that data and grow your customer base. So, what's that journey look like for you, and how have you gone about tackling that?
Well, awesome, awesome. So, data is very important. How you keep the data, and even before you do anything with data, one of the very key things to do is to actually do your research. So, at PayAngel, we actually try to find data of which demographic group needs to really send money, because we are in the business of remittance and payments. So, which demographics usually want to send money? So, we know that for us, we are mostly Africa driven, even though we have a global approach to things. So, first, you understand the needs of people. So, if you take Africans, if you take West Africa, if you take East Africa, if you look at the data that is available, you would realize that last year, almost 20 billion in remittance, $20 billion thereabout in remittances went to Nigeria alone. So there, you know that there is a need for Nigerians abroad to actually send money home. If you look at Ghana, there is, about 4 to 5 million that was going into Ghana. If you look at Kenya, there is an amount that goes to Kenya. So with an idea of, secondary data available to you to actually get this information, then you would strategically position yourselves to send money from the diaspora to these countries because there's been a need. Also,
Mhm.
there are countries like Congo DRC, South Sudan, who may also want to receive money from donors who are also receiving money from their people, let's say in somewhere in Australia. So once you do a market research, you're able to collate all this data to ensure that you're serving these people and taking away, their pain points and making them gain points for them to connect to their families and friends back home. Also, we use the data we do get from the people that use our platform. So, as a community centric organization, we try to work a lot with various communities, various group, various organizations to actually let them know for the need for which we are solving. I mean, we solve their needs of sending that money back home. And by so doing, they are able to use our platforms. And then we understand the data from our back end and see we're able to map out who needs what and where we should focus a bit more in terms of marketing and in terms of market expansion.
That's fascinating. And going back to the first point of the 2 points that you just made about understanding the market before you even start spending money and you're looking at who is going to have a need for this. I think it's quite interesting when you look at a lot of new businesses that start that don't look at making data driven decisions. And I personally think that's one of their biggest failings is that they'll say, oh, I feel like this company will be able to help these people. But what you're saying here is that you were able to say concretely that actually these people here, there is a need for this because we're able to help them and we can see that they're sending this much overseas, etc. And you want a piece of that pie effectively and to be able to do it more affordably for them.
Exactly, exactly. Because without the data, like you rightly hit spot on, without the data, you may think or you may be thinking that, okay, this is what the people need. But in actual sense, they really don't need that. So you could take certain markets and you may think because they are in Africa there is a need for remittances or there is a need for people to send money. But data would actually let you know that just a few of probably the population are out there doing stuff. Majority of the population remains within the country or just in neighboring countries in Africa. And so you may have to spend on development, you may spend on infrastructure, trying to set up shop for these countries. And at the end of the day, you would realize that there's no funds moving from the diaspora into these countries. And that resource could have been channeled into a functioning corridor where you could have really help the people to meet their needs. So yes, data for us is very important, and we are fueled by the data, we are driven by the data, and we do make data-driven decisions.
That's really interesting. And going back to some of the points that we discussed at the very beginning before we started recording, I think you've mentioned it a couple of times, and that's around the transparency of costs and the fees that are involved. So why do you think the market is so unclear with how much it costs to send money? And why do you think that some businesses charge what they do? Is it because they don't want to send money, or what's the drivers behind that?
Okay, so the drive behind that, every business has a purpose for which it was formed. So
Yeah.
some purely for profit making, some actually solve a need and help the people, even though there is an element of profit. Sorry. So at Pay Angel, we are here not for profits, but we are here to solve a need. And we have realized that there are so many ways to actually get a bit of profit from the remittances that go from the diaspora to Africa. And so the burden shouldn't be on the very people you are trying to help, because cost of remittances are quite exorbitant. And even with the United Nations sustainable goals, by the next few years, they want to reduce the cost of remittances to below 3%. And already Pay Angel, we are doing at no fees. So this should tell you that even at no fees, we're still surviving. So you wonder why others are not treating things the same way we're doing. So I believe that people could find genius ways of actually making a bit of money whilst solving real life problems instead of focusing too much on making profit out of these remittances that move from the diaspora to Africa. However, there are some fees attached to all that we do. I mean, it's not that rosy where we can just send the money from point A to point B. There are fees involved where these fintechs or these financial institutions may have to either partner other people to enable them send money across borders, and they need to pay for these fees in between these intermediaries, and so they may want to defer that cost to the customer, which for Pay Angel we're trying to eliminate all that and ensure that customers are able to send money for free at their convenience and very, very seamless for them because of our robust infrastructure we do have for our cross-border remittances and payments.
So the one, because obviously someone like Barclays, HSBC, NatWest, any kind of major company that's got millions and millions behind them could go and spin up this service overnight. But what you're saying then is the reason that they wouldn't do that is because they're focused purely on, from your point of view, profitability and not necessarily serving a community. They're not looking at something that's going to do good for the community. They're purely focused on how much money can they make from that. Oh, okay, we offer that as a service and we're happy making the profit that we make. We don't want to kind of look at reducing those costs. So that then is what's giving you the opportunity to be able to operate as a business effectively,
Effectively,
because of that need to serve the community.
yes, effectively. And again, some of these large organizations, they do have their business model, and they understand how they want to operate because probably they have a large workforce and they need to pay them. So for every avenue that they can get a bit to ensure that their operations are moving smoothly, that is the way by which they may want to go. But for us as Pay Angel, even though, yes, we are a business and we look at making profits, we focus more on the need to solve a particular problem which we have identified and fill that gap to ensure that everyone in the diaspora is connected to their families back home and we keep everyone smiling.
Brilliant. So taking a step back, earlier on, you said you make a small amount of profit in order to survive. But from what I've read online, it definitely sounds like you're doing more than surviving. It sounds like you're thriving. It's growing significantly. So what, obviously this is a key part of your role. What's that growth journey look like over the last four years or so, 5 years, would you say?
Yes, it's been a very exciting one. So, even though we have had a bit of funding from the Swiss government, from the European Union Trust Fund, under the United Nations Capital Development Fund Green Project in Africa, we have had some grants to keep us going. We have actually thrived and gotten to this point with little or no marketing budget, and I could boldly say that we are the most innovative fintech or remittance company out there with the kinds of things we do. In the past 4 years, since I joined Pay Angel, one of the great things, I mean, since I joined Pay Angel, the global number of new customers we had was just under 2000, and 4 years down the line we are hitting 100K milestone and even over, and we are doing high revenues, and a lot of transactions have gone through us in the past 4 years. You can see that we are actually taking our places in the global market and taking a bit of the market share. And interestingly, we've been able to secure awards, and we've been part of Techstars 20 January cohort. We've been part of Stanford Seed, and so we are actually solving a need, and the global ecosystem have actually recognized that we're doing that well. And so now everybody wants to support, everybody wants to come in, and investors are looking at us as the next unicorn.
Wow, well done. I mean, congratulations. That's been a massive achievement to be able to get to that point. So, what's the secret sauce? How are you doing that with limited marketing funds or little to no marketing funds, as you explained it? How are you getting that word out there? How are you sharing that message? And how are you getting people to adopt your platform and find out about you?
Great. So, like I said earlier, we are very community centric. And so we actually want to solve a real need. So, first of all, we try to get into the communities, partner with organizations, partner with alumni associations, partner with churches. Based on data, we know where we can find people who actually have the need to send money back home. Yes, we do not throw away our digital channels. We do also use digital channels to reach the people we may not be able to physically get in contact with, but we try to stay in tune with the community. So we have partnerships. Recently, just a few days behind, we paid a courtesy call on the Kenyan High Commission, and then the Deputy Kenyan High Commissioner, Honorable Dr. Joseph Waruri, is one that is supporting us to ensure that we can reach every Kenyan in the UK, to ensure that they use Pay Angel to send money back home. Aside that, we are reaching other high commissions, we're reaching other government bodies to ensure that we are actually serving the people and not just only making profit. Again, we have some very interesting initiatives where we create internship opportunities. We create these for people that Africans, especially that are here in the diaspora and are schooling and may need some work experience. So, with some of these initiatives, you do get word of mouth referral spreading very fast, and people
Mhm.
actually believing, because regardless of whatever we think, word of mouth referral is still the number one form of actually getting the message out there, because then people will trust. Oh, Chris told me about this, hence I do trust their service. And so we do a cocktail of word of mouth referral, in person activations, digital marketing, and then we bring all that together to actually grow how we've grown so far.
Wow, that's really impressive and a really interesting journey. So that's the last 4 to 5 years since you've been there. But what
Yes.
does the future look like? What's the future roadmap look like? And what's the direction of travel for you, Joseph?
The future is so exciting. So, in the past few years, we've been able to open our Australian market, Canadian market, the US market. We're trying to get our EU license back. We are in the UK. We are in about 13 African countries, and we have the capability of serving even up to 32 African countries. We are in Asia and Bangladesh. And so now we do, as Pay Angels say, we are not just Africa's payment aspect, but we do global payments with local simplicity. And so now, for every migrant living outside their home, we are trying to get in touch with you and ensure that we are able to connect you. We are that bridge to connect you to your family and friends back home. Aside that, we have also had that B2B angle where there are businesses who have the need to actually send money back home. And so for businesses, we also give you that, seamless platform for you as a business in Africa to collect monies from the diaspora, to collect monies from other migrant businesses who are out here. So take an example. Chris has a team in Ghana working for this podcast. Chris needs to pay the Ghana office. We make it very easy for you to use our system to pay your team in Ghana. Also, assuming you have a business and you want to send money to a country like Ghana, we do have the rails. We do have an enhanced PSP license, payment service provider license, that you can connect into, so you can also serve the ecosystem like you want to. So there's a B2B angle, and then there's the P2P, which is a peer-to-peer angle where we serve individuals. We have partnered with the likes of the Student Loan Trust Fund, where students who took, let's say, loans from Africa or Ghana, country in specific, if they travel to the diaspora and they need to pay back their student loan, we have partnered with the Student Loan Trust Fund, and they can use us as a means by which they can pay these loans. They just go onto our app, put in their ID, and then they put in amount, send, and then student loan is able to reconcile every money that is coming from anywhere in this world, and that makes business easier for businesses in Africa and even the diaspora. So yes, that is the future for us. The future is for us to be the global payment experts with local simplicity.
Fantastic. I really love that slogan. Well, thank you very, very much. I really do appreciate your time. It's been a fascinating discussion. And for those of you who are listening to this podcast and would like to find out more, please do connect in with Joseph via his LinkedIn. His LinkedIn details is easily found on the podcast website, which is idlpodcast.com. And Joseph's details will be at the bottom of this broadcast. Thank you very much, Joseph, for your time. I really do appreciate it. It's been a really, really interesting discussion. So thank you, and look forward to speaking to you shortly after this call as well, I'm sure.
Ah, great, Chris. I would always love to be here to actually share insights and tell you more about PayAngel and what is actually happening within the remittance and payment space. I'm honored to be on this IDL podcast.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you to all our listeners. Goodbye for now.